Oop, hold on, I gotta. So again, you cannot determine the shortest side, longest side, the order of the lengths or anything just by looking at the image. Again, you could get lucky if they drew it to scale. It will not work in this one though, and it will not work on the quiz. So don't do it on my stuff. So what is it that we have to know in order to put them in order? Why? Why does that help? What I did there? Right triangle. Much simpler. Doing too much. Yeah, fine. What about the angles? What did we say? We learned a concept. They add up to 180. Well, they do add up to 180, but we're not solving anything yet. I'm talking about what is the relationship between an angle and the length of a particular side of the triangle. There. Believe. Like it. I don't know how to say it in English. I know, that's why I like it. Make them space. Very special. So I'm going to let Ronnie go ahead and jump in.
The smallest angle is the little comes from the smallest line.
Exactly. See, it's exactly what Diego's going to say. So again, so here's your relationship, because there's not going to be all math questions. The question may be as simple as explain the relationship between the angles of a triangle and the length of the side. That might be the question. So you don't know what the answer is because you weren't paying attention. Exactly. That's the point. Don't let it become a distraction. It's as simple as saying the smaller the angle, the shorter the opposite side. So again, if this were the case, which again, don't count on it being the case visually, because it's not going to be the case. If this were the small, interesting. If that were the smallest angle, this opposite side would have to be the shortest side. If, don't write it into the figure if you drew the figure. I'm just saying if this were smallest, opposite side is largest. Always. If it's the biggest angle, so if this winds up being the biggest angle, the longest side is opposite. And it just makes sense. Like, take your hands and think of this as being part of a triangle. Look at Riley play along. So if I make the angles, and again, the edge of the other edge of the triangle is the tip of my fingers. I would close that off. Like I draw a line between my fingers to make a triangle. So if I make the angle smaller, I'm shortening the opposite side. If I make the angle bigger, I'm lengthening the opposite side. So as these angles change, it changes the side length that's on the opposite side. So therefore, when I have a triangle, the bigger the angle, the longer the side is on the opposite side. So all we got to do is figure out what's the measure of every angle. That's where the math part, solving for y, they add up to 180, all that stuff comes in. We need to know the measure of each angle in order to determine we can't figure the length of the sides out, but we can at least say which one's shorter, which one's longer, that kind of stuff. All right, so with that in mind, what's the equation? We've really already said the concept. What's the equation we need to solve for y? Well, that's what we'll come back to in a minute. Actually, that's creating a triangle. You're doing creating a triangle. That's
like you got the longer side. 2 times.
no.
That's fine.
You're confusing. You're confusing the quiz. So this is what I mean. Like we have a lot of things we're juggling. It's hard to keep them straight. So a lot of you think you get a couple of questions right in one day and you think you're done for the day. It's about keeping everything straight for quiz. And next week, you can have a lot of stuff on next week's quiz.
10y minus 27 plus 1 plus 15 plus 36 equals 1. Perfect.
The measure. So again, this is one of your most basic geometry principles. The measure of the internal angles of a triangle have to add up to 180. That's where the equation comes from. So 36 is one angle plus 10y subtract 27 that's the second angle. And then plus y plus 15, another angle, and then all of those added together have to equal 180 degrees. That's your equation. No, not at all. Order does not matter at all. So now I want you to try to solve it if you didn't already. I'll give you like a minute to work on it. Second. Check your answer. I guess I can solve it. Oh, probably round.
Oh, and then you have to plug it back.
So that you would have rounded this off to just solve it. You so let's see how you round that side one after the decimal with that. But yes, that is a good check to go back and see if that does. Now, are you done? Did you order them?
Yeah.
Got it. That's what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so you did the angles first, which that was the correct order of the angles. So that should. All right, so this is where you got to use your algebra. We don't do a lot of work on algebra. So you got to remember, I need to combine like terms. Variables can combine with variables. Things that are only numbers can combine with things that are only numbers. So I would say, well, 10y and then plus another y means I'd have 11 y's. 11y. If I combine those numbers, 36, subtract 27 plus 15, subtract 27. So you should have gotten to that. Didn't, and we can go over that in a minute. Now I want to get rid of the 24 because ultimately the goal is to get y all by itself. I want to get rid of 24. Well, then I do that on both sides. 156, 11y, last step, divide by 11, divide by 11. You should have gotten y as 14.18. Yeah, we're not done. So that's the solving for y part. Now, again, that's not the measure of any angle. And that has, shouldn't say, it doesn't, it's part of the measure of these two angles. So we know that one. We still haven't figured out what those angles are. So to figure that out, you have to take the y value and plug it back into the mini equations or expressions. So if I know what y is, I know this whole thing is the measure of that angle. 10 times y subtract 27 is the measure of that angle. So I need to plug in 14.8 and figure out what the angle is itself. 10, 14.18. I'll ask you that in a second, so hold that thought. So we get that. That's the measure of that angle, and it was 114 point something, I think, right? Is it 114.8? Right? So that's the measure of that angle. So if you got the math wrong, we'll go over that in a second. Over here, again, I plug in for y the 14.18. And that sounds right. As I told you, it does not match up with the way the figure looks. Right? This angle does not look smaller than that angle, but that is what it turned out to be with the math. I said you won't be able to visually determine the order. Figured out. So now we have measures for every angle. If you went back, I think Sky did it, if anybody else went back and added them up to make sure they add up to 180, they won't add up to exactly 180 because if you'll notice, we round this off, or we rounded this off to just one number after the decimal. This one we rounded off to two numbers after, so it's not going to come out exactly to be 180. So don't freak out if like I told you everything adds up to 180 and that didn't add up. It's just because the rounding. Now we can say, okay, now we're back to the geometry principle part. I know the smallest angle is across from the shortest side. Again, you visually, it doesn't look like that, but you got to go with the numbers. So this angle is across from the shortest side. So AB is the shortest side. So when you order them, yeah, here, let me just zoom out. So AB is smallest, so we write that first. That's going to be less than everything, so we write AB is less than. The next angle would be 36, so across from 36 is BC. And then there's only one left, so AC, but we'll just make sure, well, this is the largest angle, and if that is across from AC, which makes sense. If AC is in the largest. That's the process. Exactly what you'll do next week for the problem like that. I don't see me, other than the fact that you'll have different numbers inside the angles, the process will be insane. Hope so. All right, so we got one quick new lesson, and then, like I said, I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes to look over your notes. Let me make sure I time it out correctly. I'm gonna give you 25 minutes, so we need to start. Yeah, but for some reason we have a really long time. Maybe the lesson takes long. I was thinking the lesson was short. Maybe it takes longer. So what would that be? About 50 minutes.
How many questions? Test.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. 40 minutes. I'm gonna give you some time to 40 minutes.
How many questions?
How long? Maybe right there. 5, I think. 5, I believe. There was an error, so it's actually probably gonna take you considerably less than the time of 25 minutes, but I'm still gonna give you 25 minutes. I wrote something that won't, I mean, you could have still gone through and solved it, but it wouldn't make sense. Like, I think I made the mistake one time where you got a negative number for an angle or something like that. I accidentally made that same mistake again. Well, technically it's a different mistake, but the same thing winds up happening. So all you're gonna have to do for that problem is just set it up. You won't have to do any of the algebra. And I'm gonna, in all the other classes, I'll go back and grade it as just their setup. There's one that you'll still solve all the way out. So there is one where it'll take you a little longer, but that's probably gonna save most of you a bunch of time. So I can't imagine it taking more than really 20 minutes. Boy, and I don't even remember what we did last class in this period. This period always throws me off. Did we go through how to create a triangle? What you need in order to create a triangle? Talk about that at all? All right. I feel like I've done that so many times by the time I get to you guys that I feel like you've done it, but maybe not. All right, so we'll just go to this. So I have that. If I tell you so I haven't done this yet. If I tell you I give you 3 sticks, I do this. Give you 3 sticks? No. 3 sticks of different lengths. Can you create a triangle?
Yeah. No, it depends.
Does it?
Just to the points to touch.
What do you mean? You need to make, does the triangle have to touch?
Yeah, I could probably.
So no matter what 3 sticks I give you, you'll be able to create a triangle.
Like a twig and.
What do you mean?
It's like a twig and then a branch. No, I can't.
I don't understand. If I just take 3 sticks, I just touch them all in a triangle, right?
Sticks coming off shapes and sides.
So tell me, Riley, tell me a story.
No.
Riley.
No.
Why not? You're onto it, man.
Because if you have like a stick that's like 3 inches and you go like 10 paces from that stick, you'll find a stick that's like 10 inches. You can't put this on the cat.
So let's think about
It'll
this.
look like this.
So let's draw it out. So here's one of my sticks.
You're gonna.
Here's another one. Here's another one I find. I make a triangle out of those 3. Same.
Not a proper.
Not a proper triangle.
Whoa.
Triangle though.
No such thing as a proper. There's a triangle or it's not a triangle.
Okay, triangle. You could probably, yeah.
Not the big one.
What has to happen if it's gonna be a triangle?
The ends have to meet.
So I'm gonna attach that to the end, right? I'm gonna attach that to the end, right? And what has to happen with the end of the red and blue to make a triangle?
They have to touch, they have to intersect.
Who's gonna touch?
No.
No,
So can I make a triangle?
no.
No.
So it is not necessarily true. It's not true. And if I have any 3-sided sticks, I can make a triangle. There's a rule. There is a rule that's gonna be your Bible for this lesson as to when you can make a triangle. And we're gonna create that rule in words. So now let's start putting some numbers in to help us think about how it would have to happen. Let's say this was 10. I would say, just to make my numbers easy, let's say this is 1, this is 3. Oh, I'm gonna go with. You're wrong with pink and purple, you're wrong with the sorry.
I said.
So, it's just facts. You can't argue with numbers and facts. So. What my last girlfriend said, that's what I'm saying. So, 1 and 3. Can't make one, right? What needs to happen?
They have to be.
Yes.
Both of them?
You make them.
Both of them, right? They could both get longer. All right, so let's make them longer. Let's say, all right, well, that didn't work. I'm just gonna, since I have blue in my hand, I'm just gonna keep working with this one. What if I do that? That might have been, I didn't even think about it. That might have been right. I didn't
You
really,
can make one the base. You can make one.
I didn't even really think about the numbers.
You can make one the base.
So can I make triangles?
Yeah.
That makes a triangle?
No.
No.
like-
Okay, so that doesn't work, right? Because if I lay this one down, so that's gonna be 1. That's gonna fall down. That'll get to 7. I'm gonna have a gap, right? I'm still not touching. Still a gap. Gap of 2, if you want to do the math. Exactly, because this would be 7, 1, 8. So the gap is 2. So what do I need? Oh, I didn't mean to erase my stick. Dadgummit.
Your stick.
Luckily, I can draw it back here. So, what do I need?
Both.
We could make them both longer. I could actually just make one of them a lot longer too.
Yeah, because you can.
So give me a number.
9, 13.
Oh, 9. I love 9. Let's see why I like 9 in a second.
Graders.
We're not all like.
You could.
Actually,
If I'm looking. at-
raise your hand if you are in, if you don't care about the book. Raise your hand if you're in 9th grade. Oh, how many? I got a bunch.
Only 14 books. 14.
Some of them might be lying. Sometimes people like to just raise their hand for no reason. Pay attention. Sometimes people like it.
How much?
All right, so let's lay these 2 all the way down. So I'm gonna lay down the one that says 1, right? So I'm gonna lay that down. It's gonna lay right here. So now I'm gonna actually draw it out. So I laid this one down. So now it's right there. So it's still 1. I'm gonna lay this one down. Pause. Lay that down. It's gonna go to right there and finally touch. To the triangle.
That's a triangle. That's not size 2.
It's not a triangle. It's 2 line segments right on top of a line segment. That is not a triangle.
If it was like.
So that didn't work. So what needs to happen from there in order for? It needs to be what? What's a math word? Use your words. What's a math word it needs to be? And then we're gonna create the actually.
Elongate.
There's a better word. It needs to be.
Right.
It's sort of, oh, now we're getting into math word. That's what I mean by.
What did he say?
Math word.
What did he-
Not equal.
What did he say?
If you just started to say the
Obtuse.
word. It doesn't need to be equal, which is the same thing as congruent.
That little R thingy that my sixth grade math teacher taught me.
Little
It's like-
numbers.
It's like. And these are not equal. Something like that. Oh, what do you want?
I don't even know what that, I don't even know what you're referring to there. What is it that would need to be true about really these two sides, if you think of them as being, they're going to join, something about those two sides as they relate to this third side.
Oh, it's because one is straight and 9 is diagonal.
Well, I'm not asking for why at this point. We kind of, I'm thinking we understand it, but we're coming up with a rule now. In order to make a triangle, what has to be true about the relationship of the sides, specifically the two shorter sides as it relates to the longer side?
Is it like making an isosceles triangle?
They have to,
It has nothing to do, doesn't matter what kind of
No.
triangle.
the shorter sides have to equal the longer.
Well, they will have to touch, but what's gonna allow them to, oh, I think
The
you said
shorter
it,
sides have to equal the longer side, right?
not equal, because they didn't work when they eququaled, right?
There you go.
Yeah,
So,
bigger.
so what's that word in math? Because we don't use bigger in math, we use, wait, what's that? I think that's the right word.
What did you say?
I don't know, I want you guys to come up with it.
Greater. 30 billion.
Say it again. Is that what you're saying, greater?
Greater than.
So they have to be, they cannot be greater than or equal to, because equal to just puts a line on top of a line. Well, technically 2 line segments on top of a line. So greater than. So here's your rule. If you didn't get that, now here's the cheat sheet first round. So everybody write this down. This is what you're going to come back to every time you do one of these problems. Doesn't matter how complex the math gets. If you, I know, we see most teachers would have done that in like 30 seconds. Said, here's the rule, let's move on. That's no fun. So the rule. So in order to create a triangle, that's kind of what this rule is for. And it would be like if you're given 3 sides or 2 sides or something like that, but I'm not going to write all that. What's sum mean? So it means we're adding them together, right? So the sum of the 2 shorter sides, actually we'll say shortest because it's out of 3. So that's sum. Did I do that in here? Did I do why you use shorter versus shortest?
No.
That is not that.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
No, it's-
there's actually a scene. Does anybody watch the Marvel movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene in the end game where the Incredible Hulk is talking to kids. Have you ever, what's the saying that people always says? Your mother knows best, right? He actually says, he goes, your mother knows better. Because he's saying it's between the child and the mom, so it's two things. I told you, better is 2 things, best is more than 2 things. So he says better, which you never say, that's not even the saying. But I thought it was funny that we had just talked about that, and then I saw the movie. Your mother knows better. Your mother knows better. Well, I mean, I saw it again. I've seen it like 8, 9, 10 times. I love that movie. That's one of my favorite Marvel movies. The sum of the 2 shortest sides has to be greater than the longest side. That's actually the way it happened in the comic. Like those, that he truly did wind up figuring out a way to merge the 2. Although then when the movie was crazy and he went back to the.
Oh, he went back to the
In the comic books. It didn't last.
I mean, what do
It
you,
worked for a while, but then he went back.
what do you prefer, like smart or regular?
I probably like the
You literally
Smash.
hooked up 2
Yeah, that's so much better.
All right, so that's your Bible. So now let's plug some numbers in.
So,
What did we just well, we'll start with the numbers we use. So if I said these are my numbers, just to go through a few examples, here's how you solve this out. Whether it's, like I said, this is your Bible. I don't care if it's all numbers. I don't care if it's got variables in it. You go to that statement right here every single time and you just plug stuff in. Everybody, as long as you remember when you use this and you remember what it is, nobody should have issues with this on the quiz.
like 7.
So what would I put for the sum of the 2 shortest sides? And we'll write it out before we actually do the math. So 2 shortest sides are 1 and 3. Actually, we'll write it in a different color right underneath. So the sum of the 2 is 1 plus 3. That's what we would do. Sum 1 plus 3 has to be greater than 10 is the longest side. Does that work?
It has to be like 10 point.
Is 4 greater than 10?
No,
No.
So then we cannot make a triangle because it is not greater than. This is not greater than that, so we can't make a triangle. So now let's keep changing the side links. I'm running out of room, so I'm just going to give you the side links. So now let's say there's no drawing. I mean, the line's there, but I'm not going to use it. Let's say I give you these. 4, 12, and 20. What do I do?
No.
Plug it in. Well, let's write it out. So let's replace everything before we do math. So what are the two shortest sides? So we'd say, okay, well, the sum of the two shortest sides, that's the sum of the two shortest sides right there, has to be greater than 20 is the longest side. Is that true? Not, right? So again, we cannot make a triangle. What if I gave you this? Say that again, just to make sure.
It's equal.
20 is not greater than 20. So that still does not make a triangle. That's where we got to the line on top of the line. So if we use these two, if we folded it down, those two would fold down and lay right on top of that line. That is not a triangle. So now as soon as we make either of the short two sides a little bit longer, 4.05. Can we make a triangle now?
Yeah.
Now we can. Again, you just plug in the values. All I really have to do is change that one. If I add those together, I get 20.05 is greater than 20. That is true. That will make a triangle. Yeah, was I holding? I don't think I was holding anything. So I'll start the phone way out. Now it's going to get a little tricky. Thank you. So that's just, can you make a triangle or not? The next thing you're going to go to is figuring out what length a side could be in order to make a triangle. So let's say I give you this, and let's say we have some side over here that is unknown. We have no idea what the length of that is. So we'll still use 10 and 2. We'll say 2 this time. I want to know how big can X be in order to make a triangle. What would we do? Let's plug in, let's use the, again, this is your Bible, every problem. You go into your Bible. And I'm not making that a religious thing if anybody's like, well, we're gonna actually solve it out.
Anything above.
Well, actually, let's not solve it out with math yet. Let's just think about it. It has to be
above 8.
above 8, right? So how would we write that in math?
8 plus 2 is 10.
So it has to be above 8.
Okay.
It's above 9.
X has to be
Oh,
greater.
well, remember they're decimals. Yeah, so don't forget about decimals. Like a lot of times you guys, you got the concept, oh yeah, it can't be 8, it's gotta be bigger than 8. Well, 9 is not the next thing. Like as soon as you add anything to 8. So how would we say that?
X has to be greater than
That's the symbol. Same symbol we have up there. So it would have to be, just logically, we'd have to say, well, X has to be greater than that. But here's the math. Again, it's the same thing. This is why I say that's your Bible. Just plug the stuff in. We would just say, so 2 plus X has to be greater than 10, right? If I do the math, I would subtract 2, so I get 8, or I'm sorry, X is greater than 8. You can still use that. You don't have to logically figure it out. Just, you remember that's your Bible. It works for everything, even when there's a variable in it. Right? No other additional comments on that? We're wrong.
It looks
That's not the right answer.
What?
Not the right answer. What are we missing out on? There's something that we're not taking into account. We're not totally wrong,
X points.
but we're not considering something.
So long, you answer.
Well, that is sort of solving for x. We can't get it to equal anything, but saying x is greater than 8 is a solving, and that's. But what are we missing? I felt like somebody made instead.
X.
What did we just assume? And you know what assuming does, right?
Alongside.
You guys know that saying? Wait a minute. Thanks,
Huh?
what'd you just? What
Alongside.
about the wall?
They're still in the wrong side.
That X is.
No, we're not assuming. Well, kind of what we are. So let's put all that together. What did we just assume with x? Where do we put x? Well, where did we put it in our formula?
The wrong side. The unknown side.
The shortest side.
We put it in the shortest side, right? We don't know anything about x. How do we know it's one of the shortest sides? It may not be one of the shortest sides. I said we don't know. Now, when we were practicing, this was always a shorter side. But if we don't know anything about x, maybe x is the longest side.
Unless.
X. The only thing we know is that X has to be bigger than 8. As meters.
So far, that's all we know, but there's a second part to that you have to do.
I mean, if X 11, then maybe, but.
X could be that. X could be the longest side. So
Right.
you've got to then say, okay, well, if X is the longest side, I need a different equation. What are the short sides now?
It has to be greater.
We need to write this. Well, it's not greater than 12. Because this side is the greater than, not equal to, this side has to be greater than X. Right? That's the, if X is the longest side, our two shortest sides have to be greater than the longest side.
Like X.
So there's a situation where we would say, okay, well then X has to be less than 12. It has to be greater than 8. So it's basically got to be between those two. Because if it gets too big, if we say, okay, well, if we just said X has to be greater than 8 and we made X 100. Well, these aren't going to close now. If X is the long line and we try to close the 2 and the 10, they're not going to close. So we can't let X get too big either. It's got to be bigger than a certain number, which we figured out. And then it's got to also be smaller than a certain number.
It's gonna be 9, 10, 11.
So if you're not following that, again, here's back to your shortcut version. You just need to solve the inequality. It's not an equation. You need to solve it twice. One time you got to treat X as if it's one of the shorter sides. So you don't know one of the shorter sides. Treat it like that and you'll get an answer. One time treat X like it's the longest side, because we truly don't know how long it is. Maybe it is the longest side, maybe it's one of the shorter sides. We don't know that, so you got to do both possible scenarios. You'll get two different values. X has to be between those two values. And this is the way you write that X is between the two values. X is greater than the smallest number. It's got to be less than the bigger. If it gets bigger than this, then you can no longer create a triangle. If it gets smaller than this, you can no longer create a triangle. You're going to practice something. Any questions on that? I think that was the last thing. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so go ahead. We haven't torn out book pages either, right? So go back, get a book from back there. This is where your practice problems are coming from. So grab a book from back there. We're actually done with the books, but you can still put them over here in this stack. Pick them up today after school to throw them away. Do not put them back over there, because there will still be some people that need to get the pages that were absent today. So once you're done tearing out the pages, I'll tell you the pages in a minute. Make sure you put them over here after you're done tearing.
I do the back.
Wait till I say the pages and then I'll let you go ahead and go out. Books are back.
If I was you, you'd grab this.
I might.
All right, so here are your pages. Clear out pretty much the rest of the lessons. Yeah. 383 through 402. So that's what you're tearing out. 383 through 402. So that right there. The problems you're doing are 385, 1 through 14. There's what you're working on. So I'll stop you in whenever that goes off, 15 minutes. And that'll give you another 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, he's going. I was making him territory with that person. Wait, why do I have a phone? Who's out? Do I still so many phones with him back?
What was that?
Let's go. Oh no. Oh no, oh boy. No. I still don't. Yeah. I'll still let you go. Did you hear your guns clear the pages? So why don't you go ahead? I don't even remember what the problems are like. From what I remember, the first 8, I think, are super easy. They give you all numbers. And you just have to say whether or not you can make a triangle. Then I think after that, they give you variables and you have to come up with the range, like X has to be between what 2 numbers in order to be able to make a triangle. And we are officially done with volume 1. By the end of the week, we have one more lesson from it we'll do on Friday. So again, you got about 15 minutes practice. After that, I'll stop and I'll give you 5 to 10 minutes to review your notes. Oh, yeah. So if you didn't write this down, here's the rule you're using for every single problem. Sometimes it'll be all numbers, sometimes there'll be a variable you'll have to put in the right spots, but it's always that same rule. So create a triangle, sum of the 2 shortest sides has to be greater than the long. And I'll walk around and help. The first 8 though should be fast. Oh, add this one. Actually, there was one I wanted you to add. What if you had these sides? 10, 10, and 7. So write that one in. They gave you one where they were duplicated, but the duplicated ones were the 2 smallest ones. I want you to write this one in also. It's like 8.5. So that's problem 8.5. So write that in after you. We do attendance. I don't think I did attendance. Then I'll walk around and answer questions. Did I do attendance? I don't remember. Oh, and I gotta stop the recording.